I just heard somebody say yes. Shall we shut down debate on this one? Justice McDonald, can I ask you to kick this one off? Because there are some things in there that you could probably add context to for sure.
Well, okay. Sorry. Under the Constitution Act 1982, the amending formula is contained in, I think it's Part 5. And the two main rules are, one's in Section 38, which is the one that is the default rule. It's the normal rule that says if 7 provinces with 50% or more of the population move to amend the Constitution and the federal government agrees, then there can be a constitutional amendment. And the other is Section 41, which requires unanimity of all the provinces. Now, I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but hearing a couple of the examples here, the ones, for example, of the provinces should be able to appoint their own Superior Court judges, that is the Court of Appeal and the Court of Queen's Bench. I could see all the provinces getting on board with that because they would probably want the power to appoint the judges that are in their courts. And similarly, with the lieutenant governor, that requires unanimity. But again, I can see a real case that all the provinces would want the ability to appoint the lieutenant governor to their province. So, I think the formula is there, but it takes the will of the provinces then to push it on to Ottawa to make these things happen.
All right, let's start at this microphone this time.
Hey, boss. The Constitution of Canada of 1982 in the first section clearly states that the federal government, using reasonable justification, can change the legislation. The federal government has been stealing Alberta's lunch money for 120 years. The other provinces either don't care or are too afraid. So I have an economic strategy for you that will get you a lot of cooperation with the other provinces. Mrs. Premier, take us the hell out of Confederation, now.
Go ahead, sir.
My question is for the Premier. And Western alienation is not new. It goes back to when the country was formed. They called us hewers of wood, drawers of water. I had to look it up. Canadian economist Harold Innes, 1930, in his book, described Western Canada that way. This all came to a head in 1981 when Trudeau 1.0 savaged Western Canada with NEB. So we fought back with failed Senate reform, trying to make the Senate equal, elected, and efficient. That failed, thanks to the Easterners. So then we thought, well, let's do provincial Senate elections. We'll elect senators in Alberta, and the feds will appoint them. But various Liberal governments have declined to do that. We also had to fight through failed Meech Lake Accord during this time period. Then I'll go to Trudeau 2.0 and all his anti-Alberta legislation, so I'll skip by that. Carney talks big but does nothing. Okay. All that legislation is still on the books.
Okay.
And equalization, as you pointed out, a big drain on Alberta. So my question to the Premier is, it's time to stop flirting with separatism and make it official.
Okay. Go ahead.
I feel like I should channel Michael Binion here because I think you've very well articulated some of the frustrations that we've had in trying to change the way the country works. But there have been some successes. When you look at what Alberta used to be, we used to be Rupert's Land, and then we became Northwest Territories, and then we became a province, and then we got the Resource Transfer Act. And so we have slowly but surely, and Michael calls this responsible government, as we get larger, as we get more mature, as we develop our economy, we take on more and more responsibilities. Quebec is kind of at the far end of this. They are twice our population, although not twice our GDP. That's one of the frustrations we have. But that's part of what they've done is that they collect their own personal income taxes, their own pension, their own immigration, their own police force, and they press the federal government every single time they try to interfere with provincial jurisdiction, because they are saying, we are this responsible level of government, leave us alone. So that's what we're asking, is should we be going down that same pathway that Quebec has gone? More recently, I was reminded recently that Quebec did a unilateral change to the Constitution. They got the federal parliament to agree to call them a distinct society. If you remember, that was one of the issues in the Charlottetown Accord and Meech that they were discussing. So that occurred. And then Nunavut. It not only became a separate territory carved out of the Northwest Territories, but they've just got a major devolution agreement so that they also can take more control over the resources. So there are these examples of when you press it and you put these items on the table, you can have a negotiated agreement to take on more and more of the powers. I understand the frustration about could we ever have a Meech-style or Charlottetown-style agreement where it goes to a referendum. Maybe we're all too scarred from how badly those turned out the first time, but there's no reason why we can't at least identify the areas I think that we want to try to find the change. And I think, as Bruce has mentioned, many of the things in this video are things we could do without constitutional change. And so it just is a matter of some political will.
Excellent. Andrew, be ready. I'm going to come to you in a few minutes, but let's get to some of the mics. Go ahead.
It is my personal view that the governing model in Ottawa is 1867 Canada, and that's Ontario and Quebec. The latest incident with the Chinese EVs and the prairie canola is a good example. We need constitutional change if we're going to survive as a nation. The late Premier Bourassa of Quebec advocated a Canadian version of the EU, because Canada is diverse geographically, economically, politically, and culturally. Now, the question arises, how do you get the parties to the table? You need a crisis. And I think we can create one. Two major events in Canada established a free flow of commerce. 1885, the CPR was built, finished in construction. In the 60s, the Trans-Canada Highway. Premier Legault's maple syrup, Premier Ford's autos freely crossed the country. But Mr. Legault says now you can't build a pipeline and no oil and gas. Premier Smith, direct your bureaucracy to build toll gates on the highway and the railroads. No maple syrup and no autos passing unless you pay the toll. What you will have is a crisis in the country.
Okay. We'll start drafting that policy right away, sir. Nothing could go wrong. Go ahead.
Hi, Caleb Orge. I like to hear the quiet parts out loud. Is the long-term goal of this to move Canada away from being a federation and toward a union of states like the US or the EU? And considering that Ottawa absolutely will not go for that, and the French lost their appetite for it 30 years ago despite being notoriously treacherous, what extra legal means are actually on the table when this fails?
Okay. Fair question.
Well, I think there's lots of models. I mean, as it's been mentioned before, we are one of the most decentralized federations in the world. And so there's this constant tension of Ottawa wanting to assert more national priorities and provinces resisting. And I think that that's kind of the dance that we've done our entire history. So do we do an EU model? In the EU model, they actually take a very small amount of contribution from each of the jurisdictions, but they have a lot of control over regulation. And that's one of the things that has caused tension in the EU. Andrew was just suggesting maybe Switzerland is the model that we look at. If you look at Switzerland, they have a lot of direct democracy. I think they've got 23 cantons, and there's a lot more regional focus on their government. There's lots of models to look at, but I certainly wouldn't give up the idea of decentralization. I think we've got a very decentralized federation, and the question is, should we be taking on more of those powers?
Great question, though. Thank you. Over here.
Is it on? First of all, thank you very much for what you're doing. It's lovely to see democracy in action. I know it's messy. but it's the best thing we have.
Yes, absolutely.
My comment about the Constitution, the amending formula is what I chiefly am complaining about. 7 of 10 provinces, never mind the 50%. 7 to 10 provinces means you have to get one of the maritime provinces. They comprise 7% of the entire population of Canada. They're very regional in their outlook, not to blame them, but to try to make sure that one of them comes on side for an amendment is ridiculous. The provinces can discuss with the federal government what changes are, made, and then it should just be a straight vote across Canada. We can elect a federal government every 4 years doing that. Why can't we just amend the Constitution with the same method?
I wish we could amend the federal government we elect every 4 years. Andrew?
Well, I was reminded of this last lovely long weekend here in Alberta that in the BNA Act of 1867, we think about the history of this, in the preamble, the foundational document of our democracy and government, in the preamble it says that it's in the interests of the provinces. That it's in the interests of the provinces. So I think they may have been an optimist in the federal government at the time, not thinking they would get too far into this, but this whole conversation, and 2 down from now, we'll be talking about taxes, where this is blurred in a little bit, tax collection. Bringing the federal government back into its lane, reasserting the authorities that are already present for the province of Alberta and all the provinces around these matters, including the amendment formulas that are in place. So reminding the federal government of their obligations of collaboration with us, that it's in the interests of the provinces to form this Dominion of Canada.
All right. Thank you. Go ahead, sir. Yep.
All right. Good evening. We've heard tonight several times about cooperating with other provinces, and we've heard about this for, probably years before this as well. You have an NDP government on the west of us. We have one cooperative province to the east of us, Saskatchewan. Beyond that, you've got another NDP. You've got Doug Ford, which might as well be an NDP. And then you got the rest of the people that have their hand out in the Eastern Maritimes. So I think that is actually a pipe dream. Now, you've been given a mandate by the people of Alberta, a strong majority government, all of you. And all I've heard is talk, 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 talk. We have been through these panels. Drew Barnes went through all this in the Kenney government, and they presented their findings. Mm-hmm. And I think this is just rehashing, and are we just going to continue to talk for the rest of your mandate, or are we going to see some concrete steps forward and no more talk?
Okay. Thank you. Well, look, I can take that one. All I would say is part of what we're trying to do is find out what's on the mind of all of you. And this gentleman over here said democracy is messy. It is, but it's worth hearing what people have to say. So that's what we're trying to do, trying to get to as many of you as I can. So thanks for your comments. Over here.
Thank you. I'm LeVar Payne. I'm the former Member of Parliament for Medicine Hat, Brooks, Tabor, and area. And I'm also on the Premier's board. And I do have some concerns regarding the panel, as stated by the previous individual. And the reason I have those concerns is because Alberta already has the power, authority to start its own pension plan, to start its own police force, to collect taxes, set immigration. However, Alberta has no authority, no ability to actually do anything about equalization or the Constitution. And the reason I say that is because Quebec, Ontario, the Maritimes control the constitutional changes, and they have the majority in the House of Commons and the Senate.
Okay.
So in terms of the referendum question, I know the Alberta government can confuse voters if in fact they have more than one question on the referendum. So my question is, will Alberta have only one question on the independence of Alberta on the referendum?
Thank you, LeVar. Premier?
Well, we're waiting to see if either of the petition campaigns gathers enough signatures. I think there's only one that's gathering signatures at the moment. and the other one is in a court process that isn't going to be completed until, I'm not sure when, I think it's going to the court on November the 5th, November 19th. But what we're looking at is, I know, LeVar, you're very passionate about policy, as are most people who get involved in politics. And I would say the ideas that we've put on the table for consultation are ones that have been talked about in political circles for years, probably decades. But I don't know that the general public has really been as engaged in the conversation as those who are really involved in partisan politics. So part of this process is saying, hey, this is what the political folks are talking about. Is this of interest to the general public? And that's what we're trying to gauge by doing the survey, having these kind of forums, is to see if there's an appetite to go forward with any of them.
Okay, straw poll question. Should Alberta take a lead role in working with other provinces to pressure the federal government to amend the Canadian Constitution to empower and better protect provincial rights? Yes. Yes. No. Okay,